Welcome to Talk Art. I'm Sally Rain, and I will be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. Talk Art is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of local artists open their studios to the public. For more information, go to the website svos.org. Our guest is Elyse Dunnahoo, a classical realist painter. She uses an indirect method of painting with layer upon layer of semi-transparent and transparent oil paints. And she's here to discuss her techniques and her beautiful paintings. So welcome, Elyse.
Thank you, Sally. So nice to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get involved in painting?
You know, I studied for years with teacher Ted Seth Jacobs, and not so much painting, but drawing. I paid a lot of attention to drawing. There's a quote where the best part about the painting is the drawing. So from Ted, I went to his, somebody who he worked with, and that's where I learned this painting skill.
So you started mostly with drawing, and
Absolutely.
then you worked on painting.
I really wanted to, you know, it can be very frustrating at first, and in order to do really well at painting, you really need to do well at drawing.
Drawing, yes.
So I stuck to drawing, and then eventually moved on to painting.
So, and what inspires you when you're starting a painting?
Oh, I am so inspired by all living entities, really, the shapes that are out there. But maybe more in particular is I'm in my still life, I'm in my studio, excuse me, and I'm looking at my still life, and I recognize that photons, a torrent of photons exploded from the sun 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago, and there they are,
wow,
laying ever so gently, delicately on my still life. I'm so inspired to do my best just knowing that.
So when you're in your studio, do you set up the light in a particular manner to get the still life?
Well, actually, I use north light, natural north light. Now, in my studio, I have a skylight, and I have other windows, but they're all blackened down with theater curtain.
Oh.
So the only light that I do let in is the north light.
Okay, and so let's talk a little bit about the steps that you take to create a painting. So you brought some demonstration photos.
So the segue was perfect, talking about light. Speaking of light, and that's so much about classical realism. In order to really analyze whatever it is, a portrait or a life drawing, a life painting, or a still life, you need to see what is the angle of the light, what is the direction of the light. The direction of the light is going to tell you what is the shape of your shadow, which in this case, it's one shadow we're looking at, and it's the terminator. The terminator is always going to be at perpendicular angles to the light source. So the first thing I would do was do a sphere study. And I would use this lacrosse ball. I would set it in the still life, right where my subject is, and study what is the direction of the light and what is the direction of the shadow. And it's really one and the same. The light dictates the direction, the direction of the shadow.
And so you use a white ball.
And this lacrosse,
one source of light.
And this lacrosse ball is perfect for that.
Okay, so you start with a study.
So,
and this is the light source?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what this is telling me is that the light is kind of at a 40-degree angle and faced out, more out towards that ball. So that's, the shadow is telling me that. It's more this side of the ball.
Very nice.
Okay.
Okay, and then what do you do next?
From there, I would go into my drawing. And what I would like to show you here is the actual drawing I used for the pumpkin. Now, I wanted to do something very simple, so I picked this pumpkin, which is very beautiful. I mean, that's part of the classical realism, is that the uniqueness of all that is in front of you. So an easy thing to do for the drawing is to actually draw on vellum, which that is what this is here. And after the drawing is complete, which, let me just back up here, this is a contour drawing, whereas if I wanted to, I could set in the shadow shapes, but I chose not to. But maybe on a more detailed study, such as a ribbon or where there's more things happening, I would have put in the shadow shapes.
Okay.
So anyways, with the contour drawing, I'm able to put my board behind the vellum, and I'm able to figure out, well, where is it that I want to actually settle the drawing into and begin the painting?
Is there a technique that you use usually to set up where you put the main subject?
Oh, not always, but in this particular instance, I did use the rule of thirds.
And what is that?
So that states that a composition is more interesting, more appealing, if you put the subject matter within or on imaginary lines that divide the composition into thirds. So I don't know if you're able to see, but here's an intersection here, and here's one right there. So as we move forward in the painting, this is actually what I chose to work with. So getting back to the drawing, I would back it up. I would take the back side of the vellum, rub it with graphite, put this on top, and then transfer the drawing to my panel.
Okay. And then this is what you get.
So that's it. That's what I got.
What type of panel do you use?
Oh, I use, in this particular instance, this is a speedball panel. I've had used these. These are gesso board, Amerson boards. Both are excellent. This one is probably a little bit more sturdier.
Right.
I do take sandpaper, a very fine grit sandpaper, like a 600, and finally work to a more smooth surface before I lay the drawing down.
So it needs to be very smooth.
Very smooth to get, you know, really good, really nice fine detail, for sure.
So no canvas to interfere with what you're doing.
You know, that's right. The board, you get finer detail, you're able to.
Great. Then what's the next step?
But after I set the drawing down, then I seal the drawing onto the board, and I use a 50% varnish, 50% Gamsol, or odorless mineral spirit. 50-50, seal the drawing. Within minutes, you're ready for the next step.
Okay, let's do the next step.
Okay. So this is an imprimatura. It looks very scraggly and rough, but it should, because I'm not ready to commit to anything. I'm not really ready to commit to edges or anything other than what is my lightest light and my darkest dark.
So there are no definite lines yet?
Not yet. Kind of blurry, rough. You can see I'm not quite ready to commit. This is burnt umber diluted with odorless mineral spirits, kind of like a watercolor consistency. It can be difficult because it's so fluid.
Right.
But this is the underpainting.
Okay.
From this underpainting, we move on to the grisaille. And I'm also getting a little fatter with my painting technique.
Okay, so what does that mean, fatter?
So there's a rule of fat over lean. And this is actually paint right out of the tube, which is considered fat. This paint is diluted with a mineral spirit, so that's considered thin or lean.
Okay.
You do that because as you put in more fat, it takes slower to dry.
Right.
And if you do it that way, fat over lean, you're going to have less cracking.
Oh, okay. Good rule.
Very good rule. So let me get back to the grisaille. And whereas here I used burnt umber, now I'm using radiant white, burnt umber, and ultramarine blue. And I do mixes, and I do a really nice gradation from my darkest dark all the way to my lightest light, which is the white color of the paint. And what I hope to do is I really want to make sure I'm turning the form towards the light, away from the light, up towards the stem, and down to the table. That's really what I'm trying to achieve right now. Look at it as various panels, which, you know, the pumpkin it is.
Right.
But something else may not be so obvious. That's why this is really something good to start out with.
Good.
Okay? Thank you. Now we're moving on to color. So with this method of indirect painting, what you really are looking for is to go from the grisaille right there to semi-transparent and ultimately transparent paint. Now I'm even fatter yet, because now I'm adding a medium, which in this case is linseed oil and stand oil, 50-50%. One thing to note is that you can go darker, but you can't get lighter. So like we went back before, this is my lightest lights right around here. So I want to make sure those are as light as they can be, and eventually I can darken those down.
So
can't light them up.
With the transparent layers, you can't make it lighter. You can't just paint over it.
Exactly.
Oh, that makes sense.
I mean, so, I have heard where you can put a little bit of titanium white, but it doesn't always work that way. No.
And so how do you do the color studies?
Oh, I would like to show you my color charts. And these are such an excellent tool, really, for anybody if they are starting out mixing paints, or for somebody who's done it for quite a while, because you consistently and always ask yourself, what color is that? So these are color studies to my palette. If I could let you hold that one. And what I've done is the top color is the paint directly out of the tube. And then I mix it with the other colors. So let me just back up here, where this hue here will be my lead out. And this is mixed with every single one, 50-50, and then diluted with white. And I do that with every color on my palette. So I have numerous of these, and I'm able to really discern what is it and how do I get to that point in color mixing.
Great, so you have these already prepared. So
I have them prepared, and if I change, if I were to get a new color or change my palette, I would do this all over again with the new color. You can be really amazed at what you can get. Sometimes it's like you had no idea that color came about by mixing those two
colors.
Exactly.
And then for the shading, do you have a technique to tell how you get the lights to darks or grays?
So oftentimes, I'll be asking myself, it's a typical question with artists, what color is that? And more often than not, you're on the gray side or the shadow side of the object. This is so valuable for me. So this is, these are complementary grays, and I have a number of them mixed here, cool grays, warm grays. I'm able to use it as a base and then add color. If I have a warm gray and I want to add something more, I can use this as my base. Excellent tool. Oh, and I have that on illustration board. I make that on illustration board.
So what's the next step?
So you continue with semi-transparent and more transparent. And after each layer needs to dry before you put on the next, and eventually you get to a more realistic, what you're looking for is for a rich translucency of your subject. And you know, I could even go on and put more layers on if I thought to. It's very reasonable to
It looks
continue.
Like it glows. So the completed painting is there on the table, isn't it?
There it is, right there. Yes.
Yes. And you brought other images of other paintings that you'd like to show us.
Absolutely.
Talk about. So let's go to those now and see what paintings you've done.
Excellent.
As well.
I would love to. This is the creamer. And for me, I really wanted to achieve that calm serenity of the North Light. That was my goal within this painting. The challenge was involved in the picture, the creamer itself, because it's white porcelain, but in this particular instance, the only thing that can be white is the highlight. So going back to my gray color chart, it came in it was very helpful for this particular study.
So the only white on that is the actual highlight. Everything else is a gray.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, that's true. And I have an insect collection, so I do paint from life. And that's the one of the butterflies from my insect collection. And this painting, I love the color orange. And I saw this beautiful fabric. I made it into a drapery and set it up in the north light. I also happened to have a beautiful rose blooming at the time, and the rose is called Brandy. So I thought, how appropriate to put it in this goblet and paint this. I really enjoyed painting the reflection. The goblet, I would like to continue working on and get it to turn towards the light a little bit more acutely than what it is.
So when you were looking at that, how did you decide on the color difference between the reflection and the background drapery? That looks very interesting.
You know, you've really got to paint what you see, and you've got to not label things, and you've got to just work out the color. And if it doesn't work, you're safe to leave and walk away and come back and mix until you get it. So talking about transparent paint, there's a lot of transparent paint in the reflection on that mahogany table.
That's just beautiful. Very nicely done.
Thank you. This was an experiment. So again, it's north light. And north light is usually cool, with your shadows being warm. And by an experiment, I reversed it out. So I put warmth in the light and made it look more like a sunset, which is what I wanted to do, and cooled down the shadows. And used that same goblet that was in the aglow.
Right. See that, and I really like how all of the different shadows of every single petal, you must really take a long time to get that first layer done in that one.
That's exactly right.
Did you use the umber background painting on this one?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you do your grisaille, the gray scale, the imprimatura, the gray scale, and then move on into color. You know, you're able to get that reflection or the depth in particular on the goblet by using the transparent colors, for sure, layer upon layer. This goes back to when I sit down, I really want to focus on the individuality of what it is that I'm looking at, the uniqueness of the subject matter. And in this instance, this little pear, you know, there's not another pear like this in the world, nor will there ever be. So it's with dignity and joy that I'm able to paint something like this, just knowing that, the uniqueness of the form. This painting I did for a juried show, Doctors Without Borders, and the theme was connections. So I took the glass I wanted to it to be the centerpiece, and that's symbolic of life. And the dried flowers, that's the impermanence. The butterfly is the act of will, the willfulness. And the ribbon is our lives, how they meander around up and down. And then the reflections are symbolic of what it is that we do comes back at us, looks back at us.
You really do challenge yourself with the shadows and the way you work with reflections and so many different blues in that, in the glass and reflected in the table.
You know, I think the challenge for any painter, in particular for me, is if it's a satin ribbon, you want to make it look like a satin ribbon. If it's you know, if they're dried flowers, you really want the texture and the consistency to come through.
It's just beautiful.
Thank you. The lavender ribbon, this was a real study. This was a study with the actual ribbon, because you're trained to look at everything as in planes, and how the planes are tilted away or move away, either quickly or very subtly away from the light or towards the light. And a ribbon is an excellent example of achieving that, in particular the details that happen within the knot.
Yeah, well, there are no planes in a ribbon, really. It's all curves. so dividing it up into that small, but then making it look so smooth. That's
You know,
quite
you
beautiful.
really have to look at it that way. That's
Very
true.
carefully. Wow.
October Day, this, okay, you really want to connect all the various aspects of your painting together. You really want to draw the eye in and around and up, so that the eye touches everything that's in your painting. So for this particular one, there's curved edges in every single item that is on this painting, and they're all connected one to the other. In particular, the folds of the tablecloth actually have lead-ins to the vase, to the pear, and to keep you moving around.
Right. I like the way the stems sort of keep you going around in a circle with the reflection on the vase. Very nice.
Oh, thank you.
You do reflections quite beautifully. Is there a technique that you've developed? I mean, how do you make it so smooth?
Well, transparent paint.
Really? That's what does it? How many layers would you say approximately would be on a vase like that?
Oh, that's an excellent question. You know, I'm going to say probably 5.
5 layers.
So that's from the beginning of color to the very end. But as you can see, I could have gone on.
It looks good to me.
Thank you. Okay, this one, I love this bra, and it's satin, and the goal was to really make it look satin. But from there, I found this beautiful bee pin, and I'm so fond of bees and all that they give us that I had to put above the bee the strand of pearls, which is symbolic for wealth. And there's a symbolism there that the bee has given us so much and continues to do. But, you know, back to the challenges of the painting, it's the cloth and what kind of cloth it is and the satin.
It's very nice.
Thank you. This is a vase study. I'm currently working on this painting, so there's indirect painting like we've been going through with the vase, but there's actually direct painting with the chrysanthemum. So it's one shot, one stroke, and I laid it down, and that's it. No layering with the flowers.
With the flower. Different technique.
Okay. And this is what I'm currently working on, a gold leaf study. Same vase as the previous, and the same drawing. So I'm able to do 2 paintings at once by using the same drawing.
So, and this is a new technique that you're working on.
A new technique that I'm working on with the gold leaf.
Okay, and you have that painting here.
Here it is,
in the studio. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the gold leaf? We have a short period of time left.
So the gold leaf goes down first, and
before any of the other paint?
Before any of it.
Oh, wow.
So you really need to figure out what is the size, what is the design, what is it that you want to do with the gold leaf. And you would paint your design or the shape of the gold leaf with the size. And there's many different sizes out there. Follow the directions. Sometimes it's an hour or 2 hours to get it to set up before you can actually lay down the gold leaf.
So this is liquid, and it's sort of like a tacky glue almost?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's more fluid to lay down, but as time goes on, it does get more like tacky glue.
Right.
Yep. And depending on which brand you use, depends on how long it sets up. Once it's set up, you can lay down your gold leaf. So you need to be very careful. I wouldn't touch it so much with your hands. It can be kind of a fragile operation. But if you were to lay one of the tissue papers back, and then lay it down, and then slide this away, and lay this down. So let's say I just did that.
Right.
And I've laid this down here. And then you would do something that's called burnish, where still with the tissue on this face side, you would burnish it so it, I would say, settles in to the size.
So that's not wrinkly or bubbles anywhere.
Yeah.
So and that's your first layer.
First and only layer for gold.
For gold. Very nice.
And then from there, you move forward with the painting, doing everything that I did before.
So how do you, what kind of gold leaf do you use? What is that?
You know, this is a faux gold leaf. I think it's fairly common in a craft store or in an art store.
Okay.
And maybe it's, I'm going to say maybe $7 for 25 sheets, something like that.
Oh, so it's not real gold.
Not real gold.
But you can get real gold if you wanted to.
You can get real gold. I actually did some research. I believe it's like a 23 karat gold, but 10 times as much.
It's expensive.
It's expensive.
Yes, well, yeah.
So the experiments come first.
Right, maybe a commission. You can do real gold leaf. Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about what's going on for you in the future. Do you have any shows coming up? Are you taking part in the Silicon Valley Open Studios?
I am taking part in the Silicon Valley Open Studios, and I'm having it at my studio and hosting 2 other artists to join in.
That's great.
I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, what do you think some of the benefits of Silicon Valley Open Studios are?
Oh, well, it's invaluable on many fronts, but in particular to have somebody who doesn't know you, their feedback, or just be able to see how they respond to your artwork. And then there's the fellow artists, meeting them and problem solving with them, as well as patrons.
So yeah, and it's a wonderful experience. Well, thank you so much for being here at Talk Art. Your paintings are really remarkable, and the detail you get.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you.